So for years, when you think about the relationship between India and China, you probably think of tense border standoffs, right? A lot of diplomatic silence. But behind the scenes, something's been shifting. Suddenly, a whole flurry of high-level meetings is pointing towards what could be a major diplomatic reset. So what is really driving this surprising thaw?
This right here, this is the kind of language that's changing everything. I mean, think about it. China's foreign minister visits India for the first time in 3 years, and this is the message he brings. And you can tell, this isn't just an off-the-cuff remark. It's a very carefully chosen shift away from confrontation, and it's a huge signal that both sides might actually be ready to start a new chapter.
And this really gets to the core of what we're talking about today. We're not just looking at some minor tweaks here and there. The evidence is all pointing to something much bigger. It looks like New Delhi and Beijing are deliberately engineering a full-scale reset, a conscious plan to rebuild their entire relationship basically from the ground up.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break all this down. First, we're going to dive into that tricky border dispute. Then we'll look at how they're reconnecting people and trade. After that, we'll zoom out to see the bigger geopolitical picture. And finally, we'll ask the big question, what comes next?
All right, so everything has to start with the border. It's been the single biggest source of friction for decades, and both sides know it. They know that without some kind of stability here, no other progress, whether it's on trade or travel or anything else, can really last. It is absolutely the essential first piece of the puzzle.
And just to give you a sense of the scale of this challenge, look at this number, 3,400 kilometers. That's the staggering length of the disputed boundary. It's a massive, treacherous, and really poorly defined line that has caused conflict for generations.
You know, the root of the problem is that this isn't an official border. It's what's called a line of actual control, or LAC for short. You have to understand this is basically just a ceasefire line that was never formally mapped out or agreed upon. So of course, all the disputes come from both sides having totally different ideas of where that line is supposed to be.
So the new approach they're taking is actually pretty smart. It's pragmatic. They're splitting the problem into two chunks. You've got one working group tackling the huge long-term goal, actually defining the border once and for all. And at the same time, you've got a second group with a much more immediate job. Just manage the situation on the ground right now and keep the peace while the bigger issues get worked out.
But here's the thing, this reset, it's about way more than just maps and soldiers. While the negotiators are busy with the border, there's a whole other effort happening in parallel, rebuilding all those economic and cultural bridges that connect millions of ordinary people on both sides.
And wow, the progress on this front has been incredibly fast. I mean, they've agreed to get direct flights going again. They're making visas way easier for tourists, students, business people, you name it. And this is a big one. They're reopening 3 major border trade routes. It's a whole package of measures just designed to get people and goods moving again.
And if you want to see how this affects real people, just look at the Kailash Mansarovar pilgrimage. It's a deeply sacred journey for thousands of Hindus. After being shut down by all the tension, it's finally reopening. This year, access was super limited, only 750 pilgrims. But next year, China is basically saying, come on over, signaling they're ready to welcome far more travelers. That's a really personal and significant gesture of goodwill.
Of course, this reconnection is also about money. And to really get it, you have to understand the context here. Yeah, China is India's largest trading partner, but for a long time the relationship has been a really one-sided street, with the scales tipped heavily in China's favor. So these new agreements, they could finally be a step toward fixing an imbalance that has worried New Delhi for a long, long time.
But look, you can't just look at this in a bubble. This reset between India and China isn't just about them. It's also a very carefully coordinated signal to the rest of the world, especially right now with so many major geopolitical shifts happening.
And if you look at the timeline, you can see just how deliberate this all is. The foreign minister's visit in March kind of set the table. Then boom, in April you get this whole series of breakthroughs that build momentum. And it's all leading to late May when Prime Minister Modi is set to visit China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. That'll be his first visit in 7 years. It's a big deal.
Now this is where you have to read between the lines a little bit. Pay close attention to the language they're using in their joint statements. They keep talking about supporting a rules-based order and promoting a multipolar world. Now that's basically diplomatic speak for a world where one country doesn't call all the shots, and where other powers, especially in the developing world, get a bigger say.
So let's just spell it out, right? This is a unified stance. It's a direct shot against the kind of protectionist policies and tariff wars that we've seen championed by figures like Donald Trump. when they both agree to defend the World Trade Organization, the body that sets the rules for global commerce. They're basically teaming up to push back against anyone who wants to just go it alone on the economy. And it's not just talk. You can actually see this coordination happening in major international groups. India is backing China's presidency of the SCO, and in return, China is promising to support India's upcoming presidency of the BRICS summit. It's a clear strategy of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and it's all about boosting their collective influence on the world stage.
Okay, so a ton has happened in just a few short weeks, which leads to the obvious question, right? Where does all of this go from here? What's the path forward for this renewed relationship?
Well, you can't deny the momentum. It's visible, it's tangible. Real progress has been made on so many fronts, from the border to trade to global strategy. And that makes the upcoming summit in Tianjin more than just another meeting. It's a critical chance to lock in all these recent gains and build an even stronger foundation to carry this reset forward.
Which leaves us with the one critical question. History tells us that these kinds of resets between these two giants are definitely possible, but man, they can also be incredibly fragile. With the whole global balance of power shifting, the real test, the thing to watch, is whether this newfound momentum can actually be sustained or if old tensions will eventually